have a chat to Donna today about energy and time. Now, I know it's probably a weird topic to be talking about, but I've done a lot of mentoring with Donna, and I've found that she's got an incredible take on time. And I know that an energy, and a lot of the people that follow Soul Star, they love to come and get readings and healings and things like that. And a lot of the time, everyone's very fixated, especially when they get a reading, about time, about when's this going to happen in my life. And so I wanted to talk about energy and time a little bit with you. And also, a lot of the time, I'm really trying to explain to people how different all the energy readers and healers are. And it's not always what you see on television. They all have this unique way of, you know, channeling energy and being able to help people in different ways. So, yeah, I wanted to talk about time and energy with you, Donna. So I know that a lot of people want to know when something happens, and I want you to talk about a little bit like what is time out there, because obviously time on planet Earth is a little bit different to in spirit. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
So the first thing I'll say to you is I'm an energy healer, not a quantum physicist.
Mm-hmm.
However, energy healing does break down to quantum physics. Okay, so it's got these metaphysical concepts in them. How do we understand that as lay people? I suppose as an energy healer, it's just what I've come to understand and what I've come to know. And energy healing is about how information is layered. Yeah, which is why if you go to a healer, you think you work on something and then, oh my God, the next 6 months you're still working on it. No, you're not. You're working on another layer. Yeah. So our lives, our social lives, everything that we do has layers in it. Even what we learn, even if you go back to a child, you will know how to ride a bike. You probably ride a bike better by the time you're 15. Yeah. So there's always layers to things. And I think time is best understood like that, as a layer, as a filter. So we could think of a memory of when we were 5, and we have a very different memory when we're 5 as opposed to the filter of time when we're 45. How do we see that? So that's probably a really good way of kind of understanding that we're talking about a layer, and we're talking about how something is interpreted literally over a period of time. But in the spirit world, there's no time. It's a made-up human concept. It's more an idea of space. Right. So as an energy healer, you're traveling through those layers in order to get to certain truths, to certain things that need to be moved, and that certain things that just need to evolve. So it would be great if we could change our whole concept of time to how do we evolve, which is a bigger question, and it's probably a lot more accurate. And then it allows the complexity of simply what happens through evolution. Yeah? Yeah. So given that, which is coming back to an original thing that you said, which is how do we understand time? Well, it's a challenge, isn't it? How do we understand time? But if you break down your own life and you break down your own learning into how am I evolving, then what happens through time makes sense. And then you get to this idea of, oh, that's what divine timing is. Yeah. When I was ready, when I was evolved enough to get that, or I just didn't get it. So it's repeated, but in a different way. How frustrating. My God, I've got to wait. Another time concept. But if you put it in terms of evolution, which is especially coming from the Soul Star Festival, what we actually all want to do. We want to evolve and we want to grow. It's not that we have to learn and become perfect. It's that we just want to evolve. So it's a very gentle journey through what we call time, but it's about growth rather than when, which is a made-up concept, and it doesn't go with the divine concept, which is when all the layers are in place And how do you read that when they're in place? How do you work on it so that they're in place so that evolution can happen? And that's probably the way I see it in the big picture. Yeah?
Yeah. Because essentially, you know, what our spirit and soul wants to do is evolve.
Yeah.
Rather than knowing if our boyfriend's coming in 6 months.
That's right. And also, you may want to know if your boyfriend's coming in 6 months, which is a logical human question. We all do.
Yeah.
It may not be the question that is the real spiritual question, which is what needs to happen for that to occur if it is for my evolution. Because what could be your evolution is not necessarily your raw desire that you're trying to manifest.
Yes.
It's a bigger issue than that. It's a bigger question. So I suppose it would be really great to, I suppose when you think about time and when you think about evolution, we've also got to just enlarge our minds a bit to first of all understand what time is, and the question itself, it can be limiting. Yeah, and once you limit your spiritual or your metaphysical inquiry with a restriction, what else are you cutting out?
Yeah.
You're naturally cutting out perspective. And when you lift that whole time thing, you're going to get a broader perspective, which is different layers of time, different time lines, which is the karmic timeline, i.e. past life, present, future, anything repeated. Or you could be in infinite time, which is at the soul level. So once you cut out the restrictive nature of your question, which comes from time, boom, you're working in a different field. And that to me is what energy healing is. The ability to work in infinite fields so that you work with infinite possibility for that person's evolution.
Because, like, you know, to get back on that human level, you know, I might want a boyfriend in 6 months. I mean, I've got one, but for example, but part of my evolution might be the journey and
it's also
on my own.
Yeah. And it's also the nature of layers. So in working with, say, an infinite or soul layer, it doesn't mean that you won't have a boyfriend. It means that you'd have the one who works with you on a bigger level, and then everything underneath that is covered. Whereas if you say, you know, you watch, you know, when is Bob coming back? I don't want to wait longer than next week because it's my birthday. That's a really limited time thing to get, you know, and it's about manifestation of what you want rather than what is possible to co-create.
Yeah.
And that's a different level.
So, you know, on the topic of you mentioning manifestation, because it was in my head, obviously a lot of people preach, you know, you can have what you want. You just have to, you know, put your mind there, essentially. What do you say to that? Because obviously what you want might not be in alignment of what your infinite abilities are.
I mean, it's really interesting, and I think I'm actually going to sort of handball a little bit, because I think Carolyn Mice actually put it really, really well, which is that it depends on what chakra and what your level, from where your level of inquiry is coming from. And manifestation, in the way that we've come to understand it, is give me what I want, pretty much. And it's a base chakra issue, which is it's at a fairly primal level. Give me what I want. Yeah. So the issue is, fine, you can do that, and you can manifest a, you know, rubber band if you've got a bad hair day or a boyfriend or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But it cuts out this concept of co-creation, because it's what you want. And it's what you've decided you want, given the fact that it's Monday, given the fact that I'm studying, given the fact that I've got rent to pay, and blah, 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 blah. So it's going to keep you in quite a small perspective, mentally and emotionally, because you're already putting a time filter in it, and you've already decided what you want. it almost becomes an exercise in personal control rather than manifestation in a spiritual sense, which would mean, how do I co-create with the universe? Because the universe can see things that I can't, because they don't have a filter of time, and they don't have a filter of control. So it's kind of like, do you make a decision for yourself and this is what I want? Or do you actually approach this really cool dude or this really amazing goddess and go, you know what? You can see the picture more than I can do. I can. You know my past. You know my present. You know my future, because there's no time barrier for you. What do you think's best for me? Let's do that together. And then you enter in a very different spiritual relationship, which becomes more powerful. It becomes more about guidance. It doesn't have the control in it. It has creation. And then you're working with a creation field. So it's kind of like going against everything that we've learned, you know, in school or life, where you must take control of your life, blah, 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 blah. If we kind of spin that, you know, and go, let me create my life with those who have my best interest at heart, that completely opens the field. And it inevitably also makes you less anxious, because the unknown becomes known because they're working with you. And it becomes less, I must do this, I want this, da 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 da, which in the overall scheme of things can be a bit not childish, but it can be childlike, of just give me what I want. It's a very parental kind of relationship we have with the universe, rather than going, okay, let's really work together here.
It's a bit of that
and
control,
that's probably what the spirit world is. Yeah, well, that's what the spirit world is to me, which is basically one of we to quote a kind of, you know, a pretty out there saying at the moment, we're in this together. I just happen to be here, you're there, you've got me covered. That to me takes the unknown out, and then you can work creatively but completely outside of the square and completely outside of your own filters, time being one. Will it manifest in earth time? Yes. But it's a process that allows more consideration, guidance, and infinite perspective, which has got to be good, because you know what? We all live in a suburb and we all walk out and we collect the mail every day. In the overall scheme of things, that's a fairly narrow perspective. So if you've got someone that covers you, who knows you, and whom you can develop that relationship with, you take out the restrictive filters. And that's what energy is. It's working with the energy field to create and to understand your role in creation, which is a powerful statement, rather than one of a childlike, give me what I want. Or me going, I know what I want and you don't. Well, hang on a minute, they can see you. I've known you for a while.
And if you were to live life like that, it would just take that layer of anxiety and control. Wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And this is an interesting thing, isn't it? Where it's almost our lack of developing that relationship, or our lack of developing the sacred, actually creates anxiety. Or it can. I'm not saying that the algorithm is that simple, but it can, because it gives you almost too much.
Yeah.
What do you do with all that? What do you do with the power that you can't really understand? But if you make it more gentle and even a little bit more humble, it's just easier.
But it feels like you're trying to control the uncontrollable, which will always give you anxiety. It can.
Well, exactly. And also, it's also, if everyone is basically trying to manifest what they want, good God, you're coming from a massive individualistic streak. Everyone's doing it from their own interests.
Yeah.
You know, if you had 6 people apply for a house, and they all wanted to manifest it because they all wanted to live there. Well, you've just got a consciousness of sheer self-interest.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you're going to learn how to actually co-create, then you bypass the restrictions and you bypass the things that may block someone else. Like time being one of them, because time is a huge stress in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah.
So first of all, we made it up, but let's go back to the energy of time, which is how do we evolve? And then you're working with a different set of circumstances.
Because
and I think it gives you, I think you end up getting more clarity because of an enhanced perspective.
it makes sense, because we live in a society where, oh my gosh, you know, I'm 41. My time's running out.
Exactly.
I
I haven't
got a
done
partner.
this, I haven't done that. Yeah.
Done that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say about the manifesting of a house, because I try to manifest based on my values. So I try and manifest from love, for example. So I try and make choices based on that. So for me, that house wouldn't align, even if I like it, if I'm not going to have that feeling that I'm looking for, that is going to create connection with my child and with my family or whatever.
Yeah. But this is it, you know, we're trying to actually get on this concept of this collaborative consciousness where we all work together. But if we come from that space, you can't. You can't. You've actually got to open it up and work with a different perspective in order to do that. And it raises your consciousness field automatically, because you're taking demand out. Speaking of demand, I've got a dog. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's interesting because I moved house and I've moved back into my old house. But the house I just rented before that, I was like, oh my God, I manifested it. I wanted a fireplace, because I've got a fireplace where I am now. I wanted a fireplace. I wanted to look good. I wanted all these things. And it was a beautiful place and it was awesome. But for different reasons, we've decided to move back into my house, which is smaller. And but I created this house, I think, based on the values of love. So when I renovated it, I only chose things I fell in love with. And what I've noticed since moving back into a house that is much smaller is how much happier we all are. We are so much happier in this smaller house. And I realized that house ticked all the boxes, but it didn't necessarily have the energy of connection and the things that actually have created a household that is much happier and more connected. But it didn't tick all the boxes.
And I reckon that's a really interesting thing also about co-creation. There's you can manifest and get what you want, and you can have your 10-point criteria and blah 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 blah. But because you're living here and now and you've got a limited perspective of here and now and those things, you actually miss detail that are really important for you. So if you don't open up to co-creation, you actually miss the detail. You know, so example, you know, houses again, you think you want a certain amount, and this is about reading signs, which is okay, you didn't manifest that, then you've got to go, well, then if I'm actually creating that, then that waiting or that hasn't come into place yet will come into place when that is right. It has a whole lot of other details that I have overlooked. You know, and that's not time as a waiting game, it's time as a creation field. So yes, you may want a tree. Don't have that tree, because basically the universe knows that the council has it earmarked to be cut down in 6 months' time. You don't know that, and you're not going to know that.
No.
But the universe will, because of how it's working for you, and knows you that you really want a tree. Otherwise, your cat will be very unhappy. So it is waiting. Don't get annoyed that you have to wait. Get onto the game of going, okay, that's a sign that it's like that, but it's not the right time. That's not there to frustrate me. It's there to help the creation process.
Yes.
you know, and you've just got to, and you know it from any other teamwork. Sometimes people have a detail covered that you don't.
Mm.
You know, you've assumed it. Well, you just don't know it.
Like they have that other layer of perspective that you don't have.
Exactly right. And that's what we're trying to do all the time within energy healing, or even in with some of the things that I teach, is it comes back to some three very, very fundamentals, which is perspective. You're always trying to broaden perspective to give you the realms of possibility and creation. And that's where you would work multidimensionally, be it time or space, because you're working with that field. Yeah. The other thing is being able to focus in that, but use different focal points. Yeah. So sometimes manifestation is described as positive thinking and my intent, and I'm going to totally focus on that. Okay, that's fine. But if you do that, it can quickly get to tunnel vision and you leave peripheral, or you leave context out of it. So when you're talking about energy healing, you're talking about using different layers of focus all the time, so that you do focus on the here and now, because someone does want their life to change tomorrow. Okay. But you're also working on how to do that. That requires a different focus to a different frequency, and also a focus to bring all that in. So you're always, as an energy healer, you're always expanding your focus, your levels of focus, your levels of perception, and then you're bringing that through in a disciplined way, because people need to do that. So you're still grounding it, but you're grounding it in a way that has things covered with the respect, I suppose, that time needs to be able to go from frequency to earth reality. There's a process of that, and the process takes as long as it does because of the layers it has to go through. And so again, back to your original thing, convert time to layers and evolution, and you have a very different picture and probably a better understanding of what energy is.
Which is why it's so hard to predict that you're going to meet that boyfriend in 6 months.
Well, because also they don't think in terms of time. What I have noticed, though, depending on who you're channeling, which is often why I'm a fairly big fan of Ancestral Guides. It's just a general observation. It's not provable, anything like that. But Ancestral Guides have a more, or seem to have a more real view of time. Than, say, a master or a goddess who have been in spirit for a damn long time.
Right.
They're already totally in a big frequency, big infinite realm. Time's fairly meaningless. But an ancestor seems to, they've just passed. So they have a concept of earth time. They also have a concept of your life and your past, present, future. And they also know that you want to know when. There's no way around that. I mean, we do. So, I don't know, just in my experience, that I think Ancestral Guides are more likely to give you the time accurate, because they're more linked to it. They've only just passed.
Right. And
that's my take on it. But that's what I've noticed. The Ancestral Guides, I reckon, are more earth time conscious, or get our heads more of those questions than the big dudes.
Well, that makes sense, because mediums are more likely, obviously, to connect to them and are more likely to give you timeline.
That's right. They're more likely to be working on that frequency, and because that's also the stuff that you're asking when you go to a reader or a medium. Whereas when you come for a healing, it can be really, really big stuff. It can be stuff that needs to be moved, that your body or your mind or your psyche or your program is still carrying from 2,000 years ago. Or it could be something that you need to bring in from another soul time or another future time. It could be anywhere. So your breadth is going to be wider, and your intention as an energy healer is to transform, not to predict. Because if you transform, you're just bringing it anyway. It's got nothing to do with prediction.
Yeah. And I think
you're just making that change. So it's there, and it comes when it comes, because it's there and you've done it. It's a different relationship, but it's also to do with the frequency and the guides that you're using.
And I think this is a really important conversation, because it really touches on why different psychic readers and different energy healers, that they do connect to different energies or different guides and different layers, which is why, they're not all the same in the way they do it, and how they heal and how they predict or don't predict or whatever. And I think that's such an important conversation that people need to have more, because people just have this false understanding of what energy healers are and what psychics are, and don't understand the subtleties and what it means. So I'm really have enjoyed this conversation. I know we could talk forever about it, but Donna is teaching a workshop for us for Soul Star this weekend, this Saturday the 10th. It's a solar plexus workshop called The Time to Shine. Do you want to tell us just a little bit about the workshop?
Well, the reason that this has come through now is that no one needs to, you're not a genius if I say basically it's a great era of transformation, and that's transforming everyone differently. It's something we have to deal with. But the reason that the solar plexus has come up now is that as we're going through this transformational time, our chakras are changing. They've got to grow. They've got to, more layers of them become activated. There's more for us to deal with, and we're evolving. Fundamental. The reason that we want to start with the solar plexus, which is bang in the middle of us, is it's to do with you. It is to do with the I. It is to do with who we are. Even today I was just walking through the shopping complex, and everything that's happened is challenging our relationship with something else, which comes back to who we are. We're seeing ourselves act different way. We're seeing our relationships change. We're seeing our issues come to the fore, exploding, or okay, but where to from here? So these are all these fundamental I questions, but rather than making them so individualistic, we're going to sort of what will I say? Nurture that, nurture those feelings, and look at our own identity and look at that from the idea of personal power. So it's not what we were saying before, a control issue. It's how do we use our own power in order to know who we are in a time of change. Because it doesn't matter how cool you are and how well adjusted you are. Everything that's happening in the moment is having an effect. And we cannot remove ourselves from the world or our relationships, but it comes back to who we are and what is our position. And that's the stuff that right now we need to strengthen. Otherwise, we're just all over the shop, and it doesn't help. So it's to get into contact with what personal power is, and then how to use that in a really creative, modern and evolutionary way. Hopefully.
Amazing. I'm very excited about it. So thank you for joining me today.
My absolute pleasure.
Now,
Lovely
I know
to chat with you.
You make beautiful products, your aromatherapy, high vibrational products, and you do your own workshops and teachings and everything like that. Where can people find you if they want more information?
So if you want more information, go to www.jamienatural.com. As Bridie says, there's make everything ourselves here, but there's also courses and workshops that we hope to be able to work with Soul Star Festival on too. So thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum and the workshop on Saturday. I hope to see as many people as possible.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and we'll see you Saturday.
See you later, everyone.